meeting together, March 19, 2018, to order at 7:30. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll take roll call.
Yes, please.
Bart Kahn, currently not here. Daryl Lewandowski, here. TJ McLaughlin,
Here.
Pam Rollo,
Here.
Bruce Reed, Robert Rizzo, not here. Dan McGarry, here. Thank you.
Bob called ahead and said he wasn't going to be here.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted for March 19, 2018.
Second the motion.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Agenda passes. Public comments. We have plenty of folks here today. No comments? Okay. None. New business items. Salem-South Lyon Library, file number 18-001. Paul, would you like to review?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
This is a site plan that's been submitted for the existing Salem-South Lyon Public Library. It's located at 9000 Pontiac Trail. It's on the east side of the road, just south of 8 Mile Road. The proposal is for an approximately 2,000 square foot, excuse me, yes, 2,855 square foot addition to the approximate 20,000 square foot library building. The building is proposed, the addition is proposed on the south side of the existing building, and it's intended to provide a new children's program area with an additional stack space, and it's indicated that that it would be open to the public for after-hours use. There's not a lot of detail about what's being proposed for that, or what may be proposed for that, so that may be something the Planning Commission might want to discuss with the applicant, just to have a better understanding of who might be using it and what those hours might be, and just to determine if they can have adequate parking. I suspect it would go based on the size, if that's the only portion of the library that's open. Surrounding the library, it's a 14.5 roughly acre site. It's mostly wooded. It is in a public, semi-public use district, and it's surrounded by all agricultural residential zoning. To the north is vacant, and to the east, west, and south are all large lot residential uses. With regard to natural features, approximately 9 acres of the site is covered by woodlands and wetlands. The development proposal does not encroach into any of that. So what's being proposed is an open green space on the south side of the building. Based on the current plan submittal, they do meet all the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. And as I mentioned, the site arrangement, the existing building is set back behind the parking lot. It faces the parking lot facing west, and the new addition is added to the south end of that, which seems to be a logical extension of the building. The only other place to go and still be accessible by the parking lot would be the north, and there's really not space for that. So this appears to be appropriate, both internally and externally. There is no proposed change to the site circulation. There's an existing drive on Pontiac Trail to access the parking lot. There is a non-motorized path, a 10-foot wide non-motorized path that goes north and provides connections in neighborhoods in Parkland and South Lyon. So one suggestion that you might consider discussing with the applicant is providing some kind of extension from the building itself out to that sidewalk. Otherwise, folks have to, when they get to the end of that, if they're biking or walking there, they would have to walk through the parking lot to access the building. There are no new parking spots currently being proposed. The calculations show that what they have is sufficient for the needs. However, they do show an additional future parking area to the north. As it's depicted on the plan, it shows that this parking area is to be gravel, which is not consistent with township standards. However, the Planning Commission can approve that if you determine that alternate paving materials or surface is more appropriate for the particular use of the site, and that the alternate paving materials and surface for barrier-free parking spaces and aisles are acceptable. Currently, the barrier-free spaces are in front of the building, so I think what they're intending is that this would be overflow for larger events or something of that nature, so you may want to discuss that with the applicant as well. And then lastly, there's no loading space depicted on the plan. Oftentimes, loading is done after hours, so you might want to discuss that with the applicant as well, just to ensure that there wouldn't be conflict with patrons of the library. No new landscaping is required based on the ordinance, but they are showing a stand of 18 new plantings, though we don't know based on the labeling what those plantings are, so we would expect those to be labeled. And no new lighting is being proposed. However, if any lighting is proposed, we'd want to see that on the final site plan just to determine that it meets the requirements of the ordinance and that it's fully shielded and down directed. They did provide building elevations, and I would encourage the Planning Commission to look at those and discuss whether or not you think those are appropriate in scale and material. And this is a preliminary site plan, so you will see this again for final. So those are some really relatively minor comments from a planning standpoint. They generally do meet the requirements of the ordinance, and from a layout standpoint, we think that it's acceptable. You also had in your packets a review from the township engineer who identified a few outstanding items. In general, most of those items that they identify are things that I also believe could be addressed on the final. They have to do with grading for the sidewalk, just to demonstrate that it does meet the accessibility guidelines, slope issues to ensure that the easterly side meets the 1-on-4 slope requirements. And then some questions about sanitary service, sewer service leads, and then some other items that are supposed to be looked at on the final site plan, but they do indicate that they were shown, such as the general location of fire suppression storage tanks, and if those will need to be modified at all, and how that might affect the plan. But the engineers note that it's to the discretion of the Planning Commission if you'd like to allow for those things to be dealt with on the final site plan. And then lastly, there was a review from the fire marshal that I see an email here where it looks like he's had a conversation with the applicant and is satisfied with the question, that the questions have been addressed and that his outstanding items will be dealt with. So that concludes the reports, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but I believe the applicant is also here and they want to give a presentation as well.
First question I had is, you said no additional lighting is proposed, but would that sidewalk require some sort of lighting if it's the after-hours exit or entrance?
It would behoove them. I believe that the standards would require, the building standards would require light above the door. But I don't believe that we have particular standards that say you have to put a particular light on the sidewalk.
And then you asked the question about what the after-hours use would be. Is it expected that part of the library is going to be locked down and only a certain section open? So would that section that's open have ample egress and you know, safety-wise to get out?
I believe so. So there's an external door. I think during regular hours, that section would be accessed internally, but there is an external door that would be accessed by that sidewalk that we just mentioned. And I think that would be the entrance and exit. Obviously, the fire marshal has looked at this, and he did not take exception to that. And they also have bathrooms that will be open today.
So the two large rear exits off of that meeting room are not necessarily meant for specifically for egress, where they're not necessary for the live to egress, because you got 80-some people in that, potentially in that room, and plus how many people could be in the children's area. If they go out that back door, isn't that where it slopes off quite a bit when we're talking about
I believe that is the east side. The east side slope is farther north of that space, so they are doing a little bit of grading right there. So that's something that I think through grading work we'd expect to see cleaned up on the final site plan. As far as the issues of egress and ingress, again, I would defer to the fire marshal for public safety issues like that.
And then, I didn't see it on there, but when I drove by there, I know they've got all the heavy, you know, the air conditioning and the generator and the transformer. I assume it's all, nothing's being disturbed or anything in that area. It looks like it kind of passes all, goes around all that.
I believe that's correct.
I just didn't notice it clearly on the plan. I wasn't glancing close enough to it.
I guess I don't see that clearly enough on the plan either, but
It's right in that one corner. You see the generator, the AC condensing unit, and the transformer for the electrical and coming in the building.
it looks like those items clear, the underground lines and those items are clear of the addition.
Okay. Oh, that one, Chief had asked about that sidewalk being bigger, heavier for a truck. I'm from the service side of the world. I know service trucks are gonna, especially with all that equipment in, they're gonna drive up on that sidewalk. It'd probably just be practical to have that sidewalk, maybe something a little heavier, a little wider to accommodate those people who are just gonna pull up on that sidewalk anyway, so it doesn't break. It's just a thought.
That would be up to the library to make that determination. If the fire marshal is satisfied with the discussion that he had with the applicant's architect, I wouldn't push for it myself, but that would be something that they may think about, as you say, as a matter of practical course, if they expect that they won't have control over their service folks.
It's the carpet people.
The carpet people. Something tells me you've had a bad experience there before.
Oh, yeah.
He is the carpet people.
I gotcha.
Yep.
TJ, maybe they would like to present?
Well, I was gonna see if anybody had any other questions for Paul, and then we would go over to the applicant, so, and they can explain their after hours and the rest of the fill in the blanks.
I'm gonna wait till there's
Oh, okay, so nothing else for Paul? Okay,
May I?
yes, absolutely.
I'm going to turn this maybe so other people might be able to see. Excuse me. I don't know if I need this, but good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here with you tonight to review the plan that we've developed for the Salem-South Lyon District Library. And I'm just going to go briefly over it. I'm going to touch on some of the items that were mentioned so that we can address those.
And if you could let us know what your name is.
I'm sorry. My name is Ronald Cieslak from Merritt Cieslak Design. Do you want my address? No?
Unless we're really
Okay.
light or something, but
No.
No relation to that Cieslak that worked at Ford Engineering, right? Probably a lot of Cieslaks, right?
That's it.
There's more than I thought.
Okay.
I did have an Uncle Ed, but I don't think he was at Ford Engineering.
Okay.
So,
Welcome.
well, thank you. This is our site, as you've seen. We are putting the about 2,850 square foot addition on the south end of the existing building. We did the original plan, and there was always a master plan to expand the children's area in that direction, and now the library is able to address that, and they're excited about being able to do that. We do have the walk. It kind of sweeps up to the entrance. And in answer to the question about lighting, we had planned to put some bollards along that walk, but we'll provide photometrics for final to address that, to show that the lighting is appropriate. We are comfortable with the parking as it is today. The library has 3 or 4 large events every year that no matter how much parking we would have, wouldn't be enough. It's kind of like the church at Christmas. But we are showing this, and if this is an issue, well, we'd be happy to take it off the drawing, because we just wanted to show where we could expand parking in the future if we need it. By another, I think we're showing 40 spaces here. So we're comfortable with the parking. The existing tank is here, and of course I will address this with the fire marshal, but the fire suppression system is adequate for the new building expansion, so there's no need to make any changes to that. And in fact, it doesn't look like we're going to be making any changes to the pond. It's oversized right now, but that will all show on final engineering. And the township engineer can review that. This is a blow-up of it. A little closer look. There are actually 4 septic tanks. Or 3 septic tanks and a dosing chamber out here that are approximately in that location as described by the maintenance man. We've actually located the manholes, but you can't really locate the septic tanks without digging down. But there is a fence around them, and our goal is to get rid of the fence, take it down, and discourage any traffic over it with some landscaping. That's the primary purpose of our landscaping, is to keep people from potentially driving over those septic tanks. And then the field is further to the south, you see here. The generator is here. The transformer is here. The transformer, is here. There's a chiller and some other equipment out there, but our building is completely clear of it. No problems there at all. In terms of the plan itself, I'm going to give you the overall view first. As mentioned, the existing library is approximately 20,000 square feet, and we're adding this 2850 square feet at the far end. About 2/3 of it is children's area. Then the remaining third is an additional program room, which will be used by children and for other functions. And that is why we designed this separate entrance that you see here. During normal library hours, these doors will be locked. We do have 2 single occupancy toilet rooms here that will be accessible from the library. And then if a program goes after hours, which to the library, they allow them to go a half hour, up to a half hour after the library closes. So an event can't go any longer than, well, the library closes at 9:30, 10 o'clock would be the latest that they could use the space, either the existing or the new program room. And then, of course, when this space is used at night, the library is locked off, and these toilet rooms are accessible from the public lobby side of the addition. In terms of the elevations, get these on. There we go. Our design intent was to continue the sort of rural farm theme through on the new building additions. So, in looking at the the west elevation from Pontiac Hill. Of course, here's the offices. Here's the main entrance. This is the existing children's area. And then, so that the building didn't appear too long, we created an opposing gable here with a little shed on the front. And then this is our new entrance area. All of the finishes, the siding, the architectural masonry will match the trim, the windows, the existing library. And I will bring those colors and samples in for final site plan approval to show you that. But the intent is to just fit in to the existing building, not compete with it. We did add a little cupola over the new entrance because that entrance is back a ways, and we thought it might help people find their way back there for after-hour use, and even during the day use if they get use during the day at all. We're within the zoning height requirements, the setbacks. As was mentioned, I've had some conversation with the fire chief, and I think I've addressed his questions, but we will make sure that all of that is addressed under final site plan submission, which again will include final engineering. He wants some information on, well, as you saw in the letter, identify the fire lane and so on. And there is some question on coverage of the building, but I think we've addressed that looking at NFPA 1. I think that's something we will easily work out. So with that, I would be happy to answer any of your questions. My hope tonight is that we could receive preliminary site plan approval, and the remaining detail and some of the answers that I've verbally given will be represented on the final drawings when we make our final submission. Can I answer any questions?
I like the architectural approach that you've taken on
Oh, thank
for
you.
the atmosphere.
Thank you.
And it's a very good addition to have that meeting space there. I've been to other libraries where they've had that. It's nice to have access to that.
I think there's a lot of good use out of it.
Kind of
Community will.
multi-use.
It is
actually,
multi-use.
even though it's designated as a children's center.
Well, that's why we called it a program room, because it could be any kind of program.
Right.
It's not a
Right.
children's program.
Right.
Yeah.
You never have enough room like that. Like the barn door thing.
Good.
False, you know.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Just kind of carry that
Yeah.
theme through.
Gives you a flavor of the community.
Uh-huh. Yes. Rural setting.
Just out of curiosity, what events do you have where the overflow for the parking? You know?
Yes, I'm up.
Just,
Oh,
I
your
would like
turn.
Donna, the library director, Donna Olson.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Donna Olson. I'm the library director since Dorian retired. You asked about our big events.
Yeah.
Let's see, so every year for the past couple of years, we've had the Winter Extravaganza, which we have different holiday Christmas events. We have Santa Claus and a reindeer, and we've had Frozen, the two young ladies in the Disney movie Frozen, and the characters dressing up and singing, and that was a huge hit. The Carlton, a lot of people coming for that. We also have our Halloween night, where we have like little trick-or-treating down to the little wooded path behind the library. We have staff there dressed up, and we have get little samples of candies and whatnot.
Kind of like Greenfield Village.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we have the little twinkle lights, just like
Yeah.
Greenfield Village. We also have, what else is the big one? Touch a Truck, which will come up, which I think is in June. That's where we invite the big trucks, so all the little kids can come and they can touch a truck and they get in there and they get behind that wheel, that steering wheel, and feel as if they're actually in charge and driving this thing. So that's just 3 of our big ones. In the past, we've also had, when we retired our bond, we had our bonfire. It was huge.
Nice touch.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it.
I've worked the elections there several times, and I'm impressed by all the mothers bringing their children into the library, really heavily used.
Oh, it is.
Thought that was wonderful.
And speaking of election, you may be interested in using the back room with the separate doors.
Yeah.
So you can get
That's
in and
probably where
out.
it'll be, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, because we've had to go beyond 10 o'clock sometimes.
That's
when
right.
we have
Yeah.
the janitors. been gracious enough to let us out and everything.
But this will really be nice because we won't have to have a full staff or a half staff to make sure no one filters into the rest of the library while the meeting rooms being used, which we have had to
Yeah,
do.
sure.
So this way we just have just one or two people that just lock down the rest of it. So.
That's a good idea to have that separate from the children's section, you know, where you felt like, you know, it's easier for parents to keep an eye on their little ones.
Yes.
They're
That's right.
keeps them safe.
That's right.
So I like that. So you would use that parking lot if it were there?
The overflow?
Yeah.
In the back there? If it were, sure, we would use it. If we needed to. But
What do
so
you think
far-
the likelihood of having that additional parking would be? Is it just a contingent thing that in case you run into some issues with parking that maybe you would expand that, but for right now, it's really not in the plans, is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't needed it.
Okay.
so.
And don't anticipate to need it either,
No.
probably. Okay.
And if we did and we need to put it in, we'll be back here.
Right.
Sure.
The distance between the back, south end of the building,
Mm-hmm.
to the tanks, the septic,
Yes.
what's the distance?
It's about 11 or 12 feet.
12,
Yeah. Something like that.
and the fence
That
is
is,
come
I'm
down.
sorry,
The
that,
fence.
the fence is like 5 or 6 feet. That's the closest tank, then they go away because they're on an angle, the
Right.
building. But that's the closest point.
Oh, okay. Was there 3 there?
There's 3, there are 3 septic tanks and a dosing chamber, because it's a commercial building. It's electronic, the septic fuel is pumped, so.
Yeah. And then people don't have to think, is that a dog kennel or a children's play?
Exactly.
You're taking the fence down.
We talked about that today.
Yes. Because I couldn't figure out what the fence was for.
Right, when I first came, I thought it might have been a dog run, but it wasn't.
Take the radioactive sign down.
Now the gravel walkway and parking, that's just a thought right now.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
yes.
Okay, 'cause that I can't see as being even a temporary thing for overflow, how anybody in a wheelchair would be able to maneuver on the gravel to get to the regular sidewalk of the library.
Well,
And,
even its location is so remote that it isn't the best parking anyway. It would only be, yeah.
as long as that's in the future thinking, that's okay then fine.
I was gonna say, and unfortunately, I'm in favor of pervious parking for overflow type parking because of the
Right, the
runoff
drainage.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
As long as you accommodate it with an extra, temporary events like that, drop-offs or handicap spots. I'm sure you could temporarily sign a couple extra handicap spots during an event like that. But yeah, it's certainly better for temporary to have that pervious pavement,
Yes.
pervious area.
Yes.
Some sort of rule about how many handicap parking spots you're supposed to have, or if you're increasing capacity.
There
So
are,
we
yes,
don't need to
it's
worry
based
about
on
that.
the size
That's
of
not
the
us.
Yeah.
I thought I read about, goodness, where was it? About needing to, you said the overflow, the retention pond was oversized, but I thought I read that it needed to be addressed. Was it in your
I
report
think you
for the
just
building
said it
runoff?
needs to be addressed.
We just want to see the calculations.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, I gotcha, okay.
Yeah,
So,
Okay.
yeah. We just completed the calculations.
Okay.
And it looks like we're within,
Good.
it was over-designed, the last edition, so. But that'll all be on the drawings.
Okay. TJ?
So the only time that entrance would be used is just during that short time after library hours, or
When there's an event going on back there.
when there's, okay, when there's an event going on? How do those bathroom doors work? Because they're in the children's area. I just was like looking at them going, I hope someone's not gonna
Well,
put their child in there and their little child go out the back one
no,
into those halls.
during the day, the doors into the halls will be locked, secured. Okay, and then
Okay.
it's just the opposite in the
We're
evening.
cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, with having 2 doors in the bathroom.
Right.
I know.
Oh,
yeah.
No,
who's a child?
no, one door will be open at a time.
Yeah, you're right, because with 81 people back there, we need to have toilets back there,
Mhm.
potentially, to.
I'm thinking, construction, I didn't notice after, when I was in early, that the new addition goes into the old library up to the one wall with the entrance you have in now, the walk-in entrance and that the wall that on your right, that gives you the meeting room there that, the voting people work in? Or is it
Beyond that.
it's still south of that?
It's
Oh,
further,
Yeah, that.
Okay, because see, when I was looking at it, I was confused of
yeah,
what
this,
wall are they?
Oh, I would have taken you over. Okay.
this is the children's area now,
Uh-huh.
and it's going, this is the existing meeting room. So it's off the southernmost end of the building.
Oh, okay. All right.
So where we were, when we were talking at the table, and then, so the fireplace area,
Uh-huh.
right, and beyond that.
Oh, it's beyond that yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, because
Right.
then I was misreading this, the print then itself. Looking at, trying to determine where inside the old section, how far in is it gonna come? Do you know that offhand?
it's not in the old section. It
Oh,
goes
it's at all,
beyond,
it's just that wall there?
it goes beyond that existing wall, we're taking that wall out.
Boy, did I blow that one.
No, let's come back.
Yeah.
All set?
And it looks like you're doing just a little renovation of the, like a
State.
pantry area
Yeah,
or?
yes, we're putting 2 compartment sink in and, a full-size refrigerator, and a range.
Are those sinks in the program room?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, on each side. And that'll be for, again, children's programming, or if people in the evening want to have coffee. So,
Cleaning up art stuff.
Right.
yes.
It's messy.
Bringing my kids there.
Bruce, do you have any additional questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All set
Found
here?
it now. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions. I don't see, just some minor details. And I don't see any reason why we just can't ensure that those get
Covered in the final.
covered.
Sure, yeah, yes.
Now, is it the suggestion of the planning commission that they remove the proposed overflow or future overflow? Because if they did need to, if they were going to install that, they would come back with another
Yeah.
site plan, so it may make it less confusing just to take it
Yeah,
off. the
just
plan.
take that off for now.
Yeah. Because you don't need it to meet your parking calculations, so.
Right. That is a good idea.
Okay. Great.
That's why I was asking if you guys were actually using it or needing it or wanted it. Okay.
Also,
The question about the sidewalk from the pathway. Does I wonder if the applicant has any thoughts on that, or if the planning commission has any thoughts on that?
I guess you're not required to do anything additional to it, but would you think that it might be beneficial, or what do you think?
Or,
I guess I'll take that, we have a board meeting next Monday night, take it to the board and
Okay.
explain it to them.
Okay,
And
good.
see, they're ultimately the decision makers, so.
Sure. Okay.
Ms. Hamilton?
As the president of the board, we will comply with NFPA 1, NFPA 101, and the township standards. But to have somebody arbitrarily tell us that a sidewalk should now be 10 foot
No.
wide, and that it should be able to have a truck of 20 or more tons on it, and that we should have to then continue to pay for snow removal and all of those things, seems excessive. The purpose of the sidewalk is to walk people from the front to the back. We'll have a fire lane as required by those codes that will meet the needs of the fire department. And I think that somebody overreached
The sidewalk I was talking about was making a connection from the pathway on Pontiac Trail to
Right.
the building
Oh,
itself.
on that,
Yeah.
So that's something.
yeah, I don't think that's much of a, I think it almost comes to our border.
That's what I was, yes.
Yeah,
I think we would definitely consider that sidewalk.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought
Nice.
you were talking about the other.
Yeah.
And as far as that, the sidewalk, being able to hold a fire truck, I don't see that as a requirement.
No, because that's really not part of the plan, you know, I mean, it's, and not necessary.
Like I said, from the email that we have, and as
Yeah,
as was mentioned by Mr. Cieslak, it sounds like they're working through those issues, so.
I just want to ensure that we have our checklist clear. And I don't see that as needing to be on our checklist.
Well, the number 4 in your comments, recommendation should be eliminated. That you have the planning commission must approve the use of gravel for the overflow parking.
If they're taking that off.
If you're taking it off,
That's
then
not
so
an
that
issue.
should be
That's
something
not an issue.
that we have to think about.
That's why I brought it up again.
Okay.
Yeah.
It, like on the page 4, your thoughts on number 1 and 3, about the determining the paving materials, and the, number 3, the alternate paving material shall be limited to graded or whatever.
That's focused on that same issue.
Same issue, those should be up.
Yeah, so it's not.
Those 1 through 3 there were the criteria from the zoning ordinance. It's moved that they're taking it off.
Right. There's any concerns, Paul, that you have, that we should be, so we probably can move ahead then. with
Yeah, I think if
approving
you're
the
comfortable, you
preliminary.
could make a motion to approve the preliminary with the condition that they address any outstanding items on the.
Right, in the final site plan.
Any concerns with the Stantec, like 21, 23, and 24?
Again, those are items that I feel comfortable with, and I believe the engineers feel comfortable to be.
They'll
addressed
be on the plan.
Yeah.
Fine.
So you have a couple of lists to work from.
Always do.
Of course.
What was the final, the thing on the loading space?
Oh.
Is there a current loading space for the library? And if there isn't, is there a feasible place to put one?
It's right here at the end of the staff entrance, and when we talk about loading, they only have UPS, FedEx trucks,
Right.
step-type vans, not over-the-road type trucks at all.
Heavy duty.
So
Is
I
that on
can
the north
designate
end?
that.
Is that loading area on the north end?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yes, it's at the staff entrance.
Yeah, I felt like we'd be remiss if we didn't bring it up, and I assumed that there was an answer like that. And I think if you show that.
We'll show something,
that'd be
sure.
The loading areas right where the dumpsters are also, so the trash, people come, trash trucks come, it seems like.
Okay. Anyone prepared? I think that's all the questions we have for you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, good presentation.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary site plan submitted February 20th, 2018, with the understanding that the suggestions discussed will be taken care of in the final site plan.
The file number.
Suggestions from Stantec and the planner.
Do we have the file number on there?
18-001, was it?
Yes.
Okay, we should put that on there.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Oh, good grief, I gotta repeat that.
I forgot already.
Can I change suggestions to conditions? Yes, I have one instead.
Yeah,
Correct.
conditions, good.
And then can you read us back what you have?
Motion to approve preliminary site plan dated 2/2018, I can't remember the date, file number 1801 with conditions they meet concerns on final site plan.
I think there's another 0 in there.
It's 001.
And then we'll want to state that it's in the planners as well as the engineer's report.
Yeah, planners and engineering report.
And do we have to say anything about the fire chief?
I don't
Because he
think so.
sounds like he's happy.
It's all set.
All right. All those in favor of approving the Salem South Lyon Library file number 18-001, based upon the conditions to be addressed from the Carlisle Wortman Planners Report as well as the Stantec Report to be addressed in the final site plan. We'll need a roll call, I believe. Right? No? We don't?
Just do it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 7, old business items. Master plan updates.
So I'll just let you know that I am still working through updates from our discussion at the last meeting with regard to the natural features and agricultural lands. I did get quite a bit of feedback from Commissioner Reeves. I thank you for that. I'm still doing some updates to that, so by all means, if there are additional comments that any of you still have that you'd like to filter my way, by all means do that. I have begun work on the transportation section. And so unfortunately, as you see, there's nothing in your packets, but by the time we got around to packets, I didn't have anything that was well enough prepared that I thought to present to you, so I'm still continuing to work on that. So there's really not much to discuss tonight, but certainly if you have thoughts that you want to share with me in that regard, if you want to filter those my way, that would be great as well. And try to get those sections out probably before packets go out this next time, so you have plenty of time to digest those items.
I did briefly look at the transportation section, and I know that it's a little of the county will increase some of the right-of-ways and whatnot, but the one on Tower Road, it's not really a contradiction, but it's just a clarity in one breath of saying we need to, help transportation for farm commutes and things like that, which requires some tree trimming. At the other hand, it says we gotta be careful because it's a natural, it's also identified as a natural street, which is a very nice street to drive, that we don't get a little carried away with the trimming and whatnot. So it's just a caution as we draw those up that people don't get carried away on one without reading the other first.
I think that's a good
Is
point.
that north of 6?
It kind of just identifies the whole length of
The whole length?
of Tower Road, but it's a kind of generality statement. It's not necessarily specific, but it's just a caution that we don't read one without reading the other. They both can be done, it's just you want to be careful not to go down with a big buzzsaw and clear out a natural road.
An unofficial question for you here. We approved the beautifying of the hamlet at previous meeting. Came up at the board meeting about, you probably might be aware of it, are there any grants, state or federal grants, that could supplement our expenditures to beautify the hamlet? I don't know that, but I just thought you might even just think about it in case somebody decides to push that even further, you know.
There are none that I'm aware of, but I will let you know, you probably do know that the board did approve the project.
Right.
Right.
I think I just,
things offered, grants.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would necessarily qualify, but I'll certainly look into it.
also there's a time frame, sometimes when you try for these things, the process is pretty laborious, so,
Well, the board did approve the budget expenses for the project, and we're moving forward working with both the township engineer, the road commission, DTE, to move this thing forward, so.
And I guess it looks like we're gonna save money on the lighting and all of that, because we're gonna be able to be high enough
It does
with the
appear from
existing wires and everything.
The recent meeting that we had with DTE, it looks like it's gonna be.
And we're kind of looking at this being maybe phase one, because we might extend, further west. So if this goes well and the townships supports it,
Yep.
So next month, we'll finish up the natural features, agricultural, and if you have any, anyone other than Bruce has any suggestions or direction you think would be helpful for Paul, shoot him an email.
Yeah.
So he can kind of pull that together and
Absolutely.
have any other.
Are we doing transportation too? Or
Yep.
just-
I did notice one thing on the transportation, and this group kind of fixed it and the board approved it, was the shared driveway. It mentioned in the transportation on these high travel roads, especially the pasture roads, that shared driveways are encouraged, and yet we had language discouraging it in our ordinances. Just a good point that we're starting to get things lined back up again. Just a point.
Great observation.
Yeah, that's,
With all the things that are gonna be
Cuts.
happening in the USD and whatnot, just kind of be nice to take a look at that and
where we're at. and
see
all
the,
that,
see
yeah.
the 10,000-foot view of the community as a whole. See if there's any, just to make sure everything's flowing in the right direction. Okay. Good discussion. Okay, reports of, does anyone have any mind? Carol? Anything else to add? Did you have anything else to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Reports of commissioners and correspondence, Board of Trustees.
Well, I already said that the beautification thing was approved, and then we also approved the budget for the next year. We do have educational funds available, again, for commission, if you want to do something like that sometime.
Those are hard to get to. Okay. ZBA?
ZBA is on hold until the board brings in 3 new members, or reappoints the 3 members, so we have nothing going on until that's done.
Okay. Land preservation and conservation?
That is now Bruce, he is now the liaison from planning.
In Clarence, I don't think nothing has changed because our meetings were out of sync, and we're actually meeting tomorrow, so we
Okay.
we were opposite last month, but now.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Chairperson? None? Approval of the minutes, February
hold on,
Make a
26.
motion- Make a motion to approve the draft minutes of February 26, 2018 as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 26, 2018 as submitted, say aye.
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 Opposed? None? Public comment? Bonnie,
Yes, I've been trying all night to get my comment in. But I didn't.
now is your time.
Now is the time. Okay, I would like to inform you people that Salem Township does not have a fire marshal. We have a fire chief. We don't want to demote him or promote him. He's a fire chief, no matter what he did.
Okay, my mistake.
Yeah, 2 or 3 people called him a fire marshal. We don't have one.
Okay, thank you. No fire marshal.
Yeah. Yours.
I guess I should look up the difference. Anyone else? Mr. Horton?
Question for Bruce. Did you get a hold of Mr. Bonner's family?
I have not yet. I've gotten a lead that might be more promising, but nothing yet. And again, tomorrow is our land preservation meeting, which is where I'll bring it up as we'll go to. Obviously, we have the tax rolls, we have the tax address. We'll start with the simplistic mail approach, and going that route as well. So we'll get a hold of them on it.
I hope you're successful.
If anybody has any means of contact, we should find out.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You talking Leon Bonner?
Yeah.
Who died? Oh yeah, I can. Laura Janetti knows him or knew him pretty well. I think she's got his nephew's phone number. And then Bob, what's his name? The new downtown DDA guy over in South Lyon's got their lawyer's phone number. You need to get a hold of him quick. I'd go talk to Bob. He's fairly well in contact with them.
May I get with you after the meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good thing you were here.
Yeah.
Good thing I brought it up.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Linda?
We're a little concerned about the credence tonight that was put to Jim Rockwell's letter. What you don't know is behind the scenes, we had to address these things. Just like you have a zoning ordinance and your planner and your engineers review to those standards, the township has standards for fire safety. What Mr. Rockwell did was he arbitrarily and capriciously made some determinations. They're not based on NFPA 1 or NFPA 101. And so we actually had to contact Mr. Whitaker to get involved, to get this resolved for tonight's meeting. He can say that he wants a fire lane, and the code is very clear that you come to a door, 450 feet from that door on either side is, because the building is sprinkled, is the amount that you're allowed for the fire lane. That's not what Mr. Rockwell's letter initially said. Mr. Rockwell, had he done his homework, would understand that the fire tanks were put in for the building at yet another expansion, not the current expansion. It's for over 25,000 square feet. So when he talked about the capacity, then we get to the sidewalk where he wants to have a sidewalk, which its purpose is to move people to and from a meeting room. And he wants to put fire apparatus on it. Apparatus are the big trucks in the bay. It's something carrying 1,000 gallons of water. Water weighs 8.6 pounds per gallon. So you can figure just the water on the truck. And the concern, and again, the library wants to comply. It's why our architect and our director was here tonight. Just as you do, we want a safe building that benefits the people of the community. We feel very strongly that we need this children's expansion because children move through the library so quickly. They grow up so fast. And if we don't have the space that we need, we'll lose children because we simply don't have the space we need to meet their needs. And I'm very concerned when you and your planner put so much credence in a letter that was at the very least very unprofessionally written. When I read Carlisle Wortman's letter and I read Stantec's letter, anytime where there was a question of compliance, they referenced a section so that the applicant could go back and look and say, okay, do I agree with that consultant's interpretation or not? There's absolutely no reference to any standard in Jim Rockwell's letter. And again, to desire something like a 10-foot sidewalk so that it can have a tanker truck on it, that's not a reasonable standard. And I would encourage you in the future, as you move forward, and you're going to, as you know, get some plans that make the libraries look very small. As you start to develop the USD, I would encourage you to request of Jim Rockwell that he write to the same professional level that your planner and your engineers do, where he references, as he lays his points out in his letter, the standard that he wants met. So that again, if there's some disagreement about how to interpret that standard, we're all looking at that same standard, it would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
I agree with that. I think that's a good suggestion, because we don't know. Now, the only one that caught my eye was the sidewalk, the immense sidewalk. And I didn't seem that seemed more of a want as opposed to a need. So that's why we didn't do that one. But we do not know what the standards are. So I think, Paul, if you could, when we're going through these things, ensure how do we ensure that, I mean, other than asking him, but I think as a body, that we should all be going to the standards so people, I mean, I don't know, my interpretation was they got it worked out, and I would have hoped that if the applicant was not happy or disagreed with something, that they would have brought it to our attention.
Yeah, and that was generally the indication that we made, was that they had that discussion, and so we provide our reports, or staff provides reports to the applicant ahead of time, so that if there are items like that that need to be discussed or worked out, and that was the indication that I made, was that they had that discussion. There was an email here that indicated that they had worked that out to the satisfaction of the fire chief.
Sure.
And with the applicant. Certainly, I think the planning commission could make that request. I don't do the engineering review. I don't do the fire review, because that's not my area of expertise. So I do have to defer to those folks. I'm kind of a messenger in that regard.
Sure, but I'm just thinking that if we're discussing it, we would like to I'd have to ask my peers here, but we would like to implement that, or maybe consider it, or what have you. We can talk about it. But also, I'm thinking that from a process standpoint, the applicant doesn't know what the standards are either, and they don't. They're trying to be compliant. And if somebody is wishing for pie in the sky, to make sure nobody ever gets hurt, sometimes there is that overreach, and so I think that would be a good idea.
I think that's reasonable, and to Linda's point, that's why we note the sections when we have issues.
Right. I think that this situation is a moot issue for the planning commission, because it never really came before the planning commission for approval. I think that it was handled prior to this meeting, and but I think Linda's point is well taken, that if we have these suggestions by the fire chief, that it be backed up with whatever language that we have, whether it be zoning or whatever, that it conforms to that language, and that is the reason for the suggestion to implement.
Dan, to follow up what you said, I received the information slightly before Ann provided the complete packet for the planning commission, because I am the president of the library board.
Sure.
And so when I read the letter, because my husband was the fire chief here for 21 years before he was fired by the Ohio board, I'm very familiar with fire code. I'm probably the only person on the library board who is. And I read through Stan Tech's report, and I was able to see that, yes, we missed some what I call housekeeping issues, not significant enough that you couldn't move forward tonight, but they need to be addressed as we get our final site plan. The same thing with Carlisle Wortman's report. When I got to Jim Rockwell's letter, first of all, I realized that he had not interpreted code correctly. And the other thing that he hasn't done is, much like you adopt your ordinance, and there are old copies of ordinances that exist, I know which ordinance I have because you have one that's been adopted. It's the most recent. Fire code comes out every 3 years, and they update it. And sometimes there are significant changes in it, and they're based on things that happen in real life. And an example would be when the trade towers fell on 9/11, no one saw that pancake effect before. There's now things in both building code and fire code so that you don't have that pancake effect in the future. And so it's important to know not only what section of a code someone's referencing, but what edition of a code, if there's been significant changes. And we worked on it. We actually asked Mr. Whitaker, who, as you know, is always willing to work with people on this, to get involved so that we wouldn't have that letter hanging over our heads tonight when we came. And Jim called Ron up and spoke to him, and then Ron called me, and I said to Ron, good rule of thumb is somebody needs to do a follow-up email. At least this is what we believe that we've agreed to, so that we have it for the record, and again, we're in agreement with what we think we've covered it. And so we handled that ourselves because we realized it could be an issue. But as an applicant, and again, looking at you guys have so much greater significant things coming in your future, it would be very helpful if I had been the applicant to have had the code versus having to find it myself.
Yeah, I think it's fortunate for the library that you had the expertise and you were able to go to the supervisor, and the supervisor reacted and took care of the situation before it came to the planning commission. I think that's kind of how it worked out. But I think the outcome of all of this is what you brought forth, is that we would be cognizant that we have to have backup language in our zoning or whatever that when these suggestions are being made before we consider, you know, whether they're feasible or not feasible. So I think we benefited from it, thanks to your input and Gary's input prior to the planning commission meeting. That's why I said it was a moot issue for us, because it never came before us. You guys shortcutted it and took care of it, so we didn't have to deal with it tonight.
And the other suggestion I would make is, much like an applicant can go online and get your zoning ordinance, we can go online, we can look at the master plan. It would be nice to have the ability to look at the fire code.
That's a good point.
I was in the office today, and Mr. Rockwell, Fire Chief Rockwell, was in there. I don't know if I've ever really spoken to him before, maybe once. But he did say he was interested in things like the site plan and maybe like site plans that we were doing and whatnot, and be able to have input. So it will be important for him to know, like, you know, that we have some rules of the road going forward. So he knows what they are, so he can respond.
The only thing is, I don't know that, why do we have to have our fire chief involved? Because isn't your firm as a planner, when you're looking at site plans, I mean, there's an extensive engineering going on here. I would think that they would have a thorough knowledge of what's needed as far as fire.
Well,
that we wouldn't need to have him all of a sudden get involved in our building project.
Fire code is a separate section of code, and it's not uncommon to have the fire chief or fire marshal look at site plans, because in my experience, what has happened in communities that don't do that is, you know, we will go through our zoning standards, we'll go through our engineering standards, and then it'll come time for a site to get building permits, and the fire authority will look at it and say, oh, well, here are these items that we need to see that aren't addressed either in the engineering standards or the zoning ordinance. And so I think it's helpful to have everybody look at it ahead of time, but I think to everyone's point tonight, it would be good to make sure that you know, we're citing particular code if there's an issue being taken. And if it's just a suggestion, as sometimes I make suggestions in my report based on my you know, planning background, whether it's in the code, in the ordinance or not, you know, you all as planning commissioners will sometimes make suggestions because you think it's better design, you think it's going to make for a better site. You make those suggestions. So to differentiate then in any report, to say this is a code requirement versus this is a suggestion that's going to make a site safer from a public safety standpoint. And then you as the planning commission can deal with that as you will.
I think, you know, it's always good, no matter what area you're talking about, to have the end user's input, whether it be professional or not. In this case, the fire chief should be professional, and that they have that experiential knowledge, usually, you know, I mean, I'm not going into the personalities, but theoretically, they have the expertise as an end user, and they have the expertise knowledge to be able to give input to that site plan. So I think it's good that you have input from everybody, that we can have input. Thankfully, in Linda's case, she is a subject matter expert, and that helped the township in her getting involved right away and getting the supervisor involved, and saved the planning commission from going through all of it. So I think those are all issues that, as I observe it, think they're all positive.
Okay. Linda, did you have one more?
I was just gonna say that when you have your planner here, he's considered an expert in his field. He has education, he has experience. Your engineer holds an engineering degree. To interpret your code, you can be certified by the state of Michigan. I do not believe Mr. Rockwell is certified. And so I think that that's also something that you need to be considered. There's a difference between any one of us, including Mr. Rockwell, opening up a code and interpreting it, and having taken the training and the test to say that I am certified in that code. So there's a difference. And that would be another recommendation that I would make, is that Mr. Rockwell, if you're going to bring him on board as a regular voice, that he take the training, he take the test, and he get that certification that would lend more credence to what he's saying. The purpose of fire code is a life safety code. It's to protect people, and you guys, particularly when you deal with large buildings for assembly, whether they're retail stores or a church or a library, we're all concerned about the same thing, is that we keep the people safe. And I think I heard one or two of you reference in your questions and comments safety. But I think that there's more credence from somebody that's certified in the code, that they interpret the code correctly, than just somebody who writes a letter and capriciously tells you what they want.
I'm not bringing him on board. I didn't say that. But I said he's welcome to come and participate. So, difference there too. Because we have our planning role. And we have to ensure that we take care of our responsibilities. Okay, very good. Anyone else? Last call. Okay. Meeting's adjourned at 8:38. Thank you.
Just by 5 or by 30.
Yeah, you did a good job.
8, come on. 13 minutes short of the record.
You just picked this up. Oh, here. That was not long.